Good afternoon and welcome to today's Act and Learn webinar for Reproaction. Today's topic is transgender advocacy in Missouri, and what a day to come together and discuss that. So first we'll introduce our hosts. The first voice you're hearing is Erin Matson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in Arlington, Virginia, and please follow me on Twitter at Erin to the Max.
And I am Pamela Merritt. I am the other co-founder and co-director of Reproaction. My pronouns are she, her. I'm based in St. Louis, Missouri, and you can follow me on Twitter at SharkFoo. So the agenda for today is an introduction of who we are, introducing Reproaction to people who might not be familiar with our organization. And then I'm going to kick off the subject of today's webinar, Transgender Advocacy in Missouri. We are so lucky to have amazing and dynamic activists and organizers to speak to today for our panel discussion. First, we're going to hear from J. Marie Hill with Decrim the Hustle Coalition and Trans Justice Organizer at the ACLU of Missouri, and then Justice Gatson, who is the Kansas City organizer with the ACLU of Missouri, and then Miyonnee Hickman, and prevention outreach specialist with the Community Wellness Project. After that, we're going to go through some next steps and save the date for our July webinar, and then there will be a moderated Q&A that I will facilitate at the end, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. On your GoToWebinar control panel, you should have a tab for questions, and that's exactly where we need you to drop them. We love the questions that come from our supporters and webinar attendees, but please do drop them in that tab, and I will get to as many as possible at the end of the webinar. The hashtag for live tweeting this webinar is Reproaction. Reproaction is coming up on our 5th anniversary. We lead bold action to increase access to abortion and advance reproductive justice. We are proud of our left flank analysis, of our willingness to hold folks on all sides accountable, whether they identify as allies or the opposition, and of our commitment to nonviolent direct action. So today, as I said, we are going to hear from amazing and dynamic organizers and activists about the work they're doing in Missouri. And specifically because Missouri, I'm based in Missouri, we have several grassroots campaigns running in Missouri. And also Missouri has served as a testing ground for a lot of really horrible policy, but is also a very fertile ground for some amazing and dynamic organizing, not just to push back at that bad policy, but to build a Missouri that works for everyone, and to build community and go above and beyond what we can even imagine in a defensive posture. So I'm not going to say a heck of a lot. We're going to want to get to our speakers, but I do want to acknowledge, as Erin hinted at earlier, that we had a historic Supreme Court ruling. So yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, ruled that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which is the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the federal law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex, also protects employees from discrimination on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity. For a lot of folks who live in states where those protections for employment were already there, or who might have protections for employment under a city measure that might not seem as monumental as it is, it's huge, and particularly huge in Missouri, where until yesterday it was completely legal to fire somebody based on their sexual orientation, perceived sexual orientation, or gender identity. We have a lot of work to do We still need to get to work on healthcare, on housing, on public accommodations and education for all Americans and people who are in America so that they don't face discrimination. But I hope that everybody on this call joins Reproaction in celebrating the hell out of the Supreme Court ruling and building off of that momentum. It was just been a great day, and I've been smiling ever since. So with that, next slide, please. It is my pleasure to introduce J. Marie Hill. Pronouns are they, them. Is an activist, musician, and educator who lives a life designed to help our world ascend beyond gendered and racialized norms. J. Marie founded Music Freedom Dreams to build systemic change in queer and trans communities around the country. The ACLU of Missouri partnered with them to launch its transgender education and advocacy program, which is now the Trans Justice Program. And they recently launched the Decrim the Hustle Coalition, which will focus on decriminalizing sex work. J. Marie's past organizing work has been with incarcerated women in California prisons, on St. Louis area political campaigns, and with national movements including Black Lives Matter, Black for Palestine, No DAPL, and Say Her Name, among others. J. Marie is originally from Oakland, California, but now works out of St. Louis, building a very Black, very queer life with their incredible partner, Kayla. Thank you so much for joining us, J. Marie.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. I sure can. And I just want to make sure I tell everybody that the ACLU of Missouri Twitter tag is up there on the screen at ACLU_Mo, and that you can also visit their website, aclu-mo.org, to find out all kinds of information. But let's get into the questions. So if you could, please tell us about your role at the ACLU of Missouri and how the Trans Justice program came to be.
Absolutely. So I have to first, just want to say thank you for having me, and what a time in the world this all is. But yeah, how the program came about, I mean, I got to give credit to my coworker, Sarah Baker, who really saw the need for, folks from community to be fighting for themselves, and wanted to open up that window of time. And then I also should give a shout out to Alex. It's a person who was helping Sarah, Alex Johnson, who was helping Sarah kind of conceive of this role. And honestly, just for, a little trigger warning, just Alex actually passed from suicide right after I got this job. And I had an email out to hit them up and connect with them about this toolkit we were making for trans allies. And so I offer that at the beginning just to remind people of the stakes of this work. And rest in peace to Alex and their young one that they were raising. Life goes on, but this work came about because it is an urgent situation that, Missouri Non-Discrimination Act is the kind of protections for the state for queer and trans folks that, may or may not have been rendered null right now, but we have to kind of figure that out. And in the meantime, there just wasn't a conversation being had at a, city, regional, or statewide level. So I definitely, shout out to the ACLU of Missouri for seeing this, for Sarah Baker for seeing this. And the reality is that, trans people deserve to be engaged in conversation like we're people, right? And like we're leaders. And so a lot of this program has just been built on the need to fill up the coffers of people who deserve to have their voices heard.
Thank you so much. So, it is June, it's Pride Month, and we always say at Reproaction, we celebrate Pride year round, and just with a little extra dazzle in June. But I know that there's been a lot of discussion, and there's a lot of material out there across the country and in states in the Midwest and the Upper South, where we do a lot of work, about the challenges that LGBT folk face as if we're monolith, right? But I think it's important to lift up the specific challenges that trans folk face in Missouri, and what are the barriers to equality?
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I wish I didn't have such a long list available to me to clarify this for folks. But I will say that, you know, we just wrapped up what may be the first wave or maybe the final effort, the Sweet And program, or the Sweet And Fund, not an ACLU project per se, but you know, as one of the people that really helped stand it up, it was a fund to go to give funds to people in this time, this COVID time, because we knew that people would be hit harder. And so some of the things that we saw in that kind of effort to share with people these funds, but also check and see how they were doing, was people sharing things like, you know, needing to get their hormones, needing to get just general health care and not being able to, or being misgendered over the phone because, you know, that's just the world we live in some ways. And, you know, a lot of these healthcare spaces don't have doctors that have been trained on this, or don't have a form, or don't have any kind of sensitivity to it. So people really having a hard time getting their meds, getting, you know, things that might relate to their hormonal meds, but also things that are just about, you know, depression, anxiety, these other things that all of us are in some way dealing with right now, going through this immense upheaval in the world. And then on top of that, you know, separate from COVID, I suppose, but just more broadly, you know, people hit up that form and needed, somebody didn't have a stove, somebody didn't have a sink, you know, like there are things that people are dealing with that when you can't go to the store, you don't have the money, you don't have a job that is paying you enough to go, you know, buy a random stove, or your landlord is transphobic and they use, you know, your gender identity as a reason to not respond to things that need maintenance in your home. You know, I had someone come to me and share about a trans woman on the western side of the state who was being discriminated against because she was HIV positive, and her partner, her twin actually had recently passed from HIV. And so, you know, and then they had to have a generator on because the landlord basically shut off their power. And this person was in the house, this was her twin before they passed. Like, they were keeping her alive with a generator because the landlord refused to provide the appropriate housing support. Even though all was on time, everything was, you know, they just saw them and saw that they're HIV positive, and it became this whole thing that, you know, there are technically federal protections, but we know that can often be too little too late. And so there's so many, you know, layers. I have somebody in my inbox right now who just this weekend told me that they were being denied use at a summer camp, use of the restrooms. And they already have urinary tract struggles because of when they haven't been able to use the restroom in past experiences at school, at work. And so there are some very, very specific things that trans people need attention to, and that, you know, people deserve to hear as standalone issues, as well as, you know, connected to things like defunding the police and decriminalizing sex work, like things that there's nitty gritty, and then there's the larger kind of frameworks that we want to gift people so we can actually tackle this stuff head on.
Wow, thank you for putting that in perspective. And also, I think you just laid out exactly what that intersecting oppression, the weight of it, and how it takes it to a whole nother level as we deal with a pandemic and an uprising in defense of Black lives. My next question is how the trans leadership table fits into this work.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts of this work.
I know.
Yeah, it's just, I love it so much. So the Trans Leadership Table is an opportunity that we started last year, well, technically in 2018. Excuse me. In 2018, you know, the ACLU of Missouri, when I was still contracting with them, and now, you know, I'm an employee per se, but when I was on the front end, you know, just trying to, how do we just even start a conversation, right, about trans stuff in Missouri? It just sounds like it doesn't belong. Who's going to talk about that? What do you mean, like trans stuff? What do you mean? Like, you mean queer? You mean LGBT? No, I mean trans, man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, bro, like, listen, right? So I wanted to do that. One, I have lived, like you know, like my bio says, I'm from the Bay, I'm from California, which is, you know, people think of it as the utopia of queerness and everything. And I think it does have its high points. And, you know, what I experienced there was what it's like when you have a critical mass of folks who are saying the same thing, and not only are saying it, but are showing you with their bodies that they don't want to follow the rules, and that there's a richer freedom on the other side of that collective resistance, right? And so I have been very fortunate to exist in a lot of retreat spaces, a lot of trainings where I'm surrounded by queer and trans folks. And I knew that that was something that was missing here in Missouri, because you can't tell me there's no trans people that live here, first of all. And second of all, if people haven't been invested in, that's all y'all's fault. You know what I'm saying? That's other people's fault. That's not their fault, right? So one of my very, very first efforts really in this role has been to launch and to build this leadership development table, basically, that is, it pulls in people who are doing, maybe they're doing the Trans Day of Visibility, protest, or maybe they're running in Mid-Mo, we have somebody on our leadership table who raises money every year to help people with their name changes, right? So these are very specific types of leadership that people are exhibiting. And we reach out to them and say, yo, like, we see you already showing up and showing out for your folks. And I know that, some of these larger conversations about maybe the Supreme Court or about statewide laws or about policy and advocacy in general, not only can they be very overwhelming or very frustrating, but they're probably transphobic in their fundamental setup, right? And I need you all to come in the room to recognize, to see this, this sham for what it is, help me poke the holes and build a better world for our folks here in this state. And, just trust that you have the capacity and the power to do that inside of you. And so it's been so amazing to see people, come to our retreats that we have every few months, as well as, right now, the Trans Leadership Table is working on a statement to help clarify what exactly does this Supreme Court, ruling mean for Missouri trans, right? So, we're building the base. We're trying to let people know we're here, but it's been a beautiful opportunity to just see these folks flourish in ways that they just wouldn't have otherwise. And it's not that you have to be all trans all the time. What these leadership tables actually do is allow you to be trans and everything else that you are, right? Because when we walk into a room, so much of the time, everything else that we are drops away, and all of a sudden we're just the trans person in the room. And so to have a space where you get to struggle alongside and be sharpened by other trans and queer folks who have a similar analysis of gender, similar lived experience of it, it really just equips everybody more broadly to say, oh, this is going on in my city. Let me call my homie. I heard this is happening in their city. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's make sure that we can, poke holes in the local, leadership or local government's kind of suggestions to us and say what we really want, right? And demand the world we really deserve. So it's one of my favorite.
Yeah. It's fantastic. And I sincerely hope that folks who are listening are getting a feel for how multi-layered the work in Missouri is. And I know it is in other places as well, but in the face of a lot of opposition policymakers and in a lot of laws on the books that make it, people have to get clever, there's dynamic work that's happening that all layers on top of each other, and really does make the case that, this isn't flyover country when it comes to the organizing that's going on. So I just have one more question. I could talk about this forever, but yeah, I noticed that y'all recently launched the Decrim the Hustle Coalition, which is a campaign working to decriminalize sex work. How did this campaign come in? You spoke a little bit about that. And what are the goals?
Absolutely. So, yeah, so Decrim the Hustle, our take on some of the work that's actually started to happen, from the coasts. I would say it's making its way in. And the reality is, on the one hand, we do have this ruling that just came down yesterday, and it's really important and it's powerful that we don't have to fight that battle in that way right now or anymore. That specific battle to be included in a very fundamental way in employment protections. And there's this reality that, a lot of the girls, a lot of folks that I know and love, either one, can't get respect when they are on the job, right? Like they still find ways, people still find ways to be disrespectful and make the experience of being employed somewhere so untenable that you end up having to go, right? And it may not be something that's written down on a piece of paper somewhere, but it's really about what it's like to be there, right? And it's something you deserve better, so you got to go. That's one experience that a lot of people have. And then some people just don't even, there's a hiring sign on the front. You walk in, all of a sudden they're not hiring. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people can't get the jobs that they would be protected if they had them. You know what I'm saying? So we are trying to really highlight that there are many, many people who are left out of protections and these kind of legal and official avenues of employment and of being able to better themselves and provide for their families themselves. And we want to make sure that trans folks are represented in that conversation, as well as that we're just not afraid to keep people safe in the real ways that they need. And, you know, like I said earlier, defunding the police, you know, decriminalizing something is connected to defunding the police, because, you know, everybody wants to be safe. But when you put police on people who are not doing unsafe things, right, who are actually taking care of themselves and are probably some of the most clear and self-protective people in the dynamic of a, right, and then are being targeted by police, we got to get the police out of the situation, out of the equation entirely. And so decriminalizing it shouldn't be a crime to, you know what I'm saying, to make your money, to you know what I'm saying, use the goods that you were born with to better yourself and to get yourself down the line. And so the goals broadly are going to be to, you know, we want to do a combination of what folks on the ground are saying they need, but we really wanted to open up the conversation, and we're assuming and hoping that people will share with us what they think about these goals. But the primary goals being decriminalizing it, meaning making it not a crime to engage in the selling or the buying of sex, because it's essentially the first job, and it will be the last job for the first type of work that people sometimes, you know, can do before there's any other thing set up in a town or you know, a municipality. People are going to be trading sex. It's a thing. And then we also want to really look at how we can expunge people's records, right? So it's one thing to say, okay, we don't want it to be a law, again, similar to the Supreme Court. We don't want it to be a law down the line that you get hemmed up with. But what is it like to take these charges off of people's records right now? You know what I'm saying? And help them not have housing issues, not have healthcare denial issues, not have credit issues, right? People can't get bank accounts because they can't tell you what kind of work they're doing, right? And so we want to make sure that we're building a better world where, you know, systems and programs are inclusive of the folks that do sex work, that do this kind of work, that keep everybody calm sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Keep the people at the top of the line. Maybe they, you know what I'm saying, they get in their services. Like, you know, we don't want to talk about that. So we just want to open up the conversation and keep people safe and make sure that we aren't just legalizing it, because that actually keeps people in the proximity of the police. And instead, we're taking away the criminal aspect of it entirely, knowing that if we are more specific about criminalizing people who are doing the crimes of, you know, of abuse or these other things that really often aren't even like actually prosecuted, we can be more specific about what is sex trafficking and what is sex work. So that's a really, really exciting distinction we want to make with everybody, and really looking forward to having folks plug in.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hold on, because I know there's going to be questions for you at the back end of this webinar. And if folks do have questions, please drop them into the question tab on your GoToWebinar control panel. And again, the hashtag for tweeting is Reproaction. J. Marie, thank you. And I'm going to pass it over to Erin.
Thank you, Pamela, and thank you, J. Marie. So I am very pleased to introduce Justice Gatson, who uses she, her pronouns and was born and raised in Kansas City. She is a Kansas City-based organizer for the ACLU of Missouri, working to develop and deepen community relationships across the western part of the state. Justice is a social justice advocate who believes in an intersectional movement that centers and uplifts the voices of the most marginalized groups. As a doula, Justice has worked on issues of birth justice, infant and maternal disparities. She is the founder of Real Justice Network and core member of One Struggle KC. Justice also serves on several boards and committees for various organizations, both locally and nationally. As a Black woman living with a disability, Justice understands how issues are complicated by multiple factors that become barriers to those who already face many obstacles. She has a passion for protecting the civil liberties of all and is excited about her work at the ACLU. You can follow her on Twitter and Facebook. You can see those on your screen. So thank you. Welcome, Justice. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm absolutely happy to be here today.
Oh, we're so happy to have you. And today of all days, it's wonderful. I'm smiling as I speak. So please tell us about your role at the ACLU of Missouri and what issues you are working on in Kansas City.
Sure. So I'm an organizer for the ACLU of Missouri. I've been in this role almost 3 years now. When I first came in, I was kind of helping out with all over the state, but now that we have, we've beefed up our staff, we have J. Marie and Alicia, I've been focusing on the western end of our state. I do a lot of trainings. Just before this call, I was wrapping up a legal observer training. As you can imagine, we've been doing several of those in the last week in response to the protests that are going on. I do a lot of know your rights trainings, talking to students about their rights in school. I've recently started a race and your rights session where we talk about what's going on right now in the world. The difference is that Black and white families, those conversations that we have to have with our children, and talking with our children about that, and the impact of race on our rights. So I do that, as well as speak whenever asked, and helping to organize around issues that we care about, helping to organize around issues of reproductive health, issues concerning smart justice, which is our criminal justice platform, prosecutorial reform, ending cash bail, and our school to prison pipeline work, which is really near and dear to my heart. So I have a lot of projects. I know I'm missing some that I work on, but we run the gamut at the ACLU. Voting rights, don't let me forget that one. Our voting rights have been under attack, especially with COVID-19, and really trying to fight for a mail-in process. So I stay pretty busy with all of those things. The school to prison pipeline work, though, I always look at it as it's my duty to be responsible in our work, to think about everything and everybody and all the factors. And our school to prison pipeline work, knowing that Missouri students, Black Missouri students, are 4.5 to 5 times more likely to end up arrested at school or getting out of school suspension than their white counterparts. And then looking deeper at that work, realizing that the numbers were even greater for differently abled students. And then I started digging deeper because I was at a protest in St. Louis, as a matter of fact, and there was a young kid there. He was about 12, and he was protesting. And he said, "Miss Justice, I have to stick up for myself all the time." And I was like, "Do you?" And he said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Because I'm bi." I was like, "Okay." And he says, "And I'm not ashamed, I'm bi." He says, "And the kids at school, they just pick on me. And the day I decide that I'm gonna stick up for myself is the day I get in trouble." And he was, just talking to me, and he was making his plans on how he was gonna address the issue. And I was thinking about him, and I was thinking about the school to prison pipeline, and I was thinking about our work. And I saw something glaring in our work, something that was missing. And all the data that we were keeping, none of it was specific to my trans babies. And, I brought this up in a meeting, and, we have an awesome team. I have to tell you that. We have an awesome team at the ACLU. And our policy director was listened and saw that needed some attention. And J. Marie was right there, was on it. And we're very intentional now, like the coattails been pulled, like, hey, how could we miss that? How could the ACLU, how could we miss that? But we did. And I talk about it because I want other people to know that, hey, you may be missing something. And if you recognize it, go ahead and fix it. It's okay. Once you recognize that you're not advocating as much as you can, or you're not going as far as you can for people, fix it. And let's keep working together. I just wanted to share that story for anybody who may be listening, because now that we're gonna keep track of this. And now when people talk about, well, how do you know trans kids are having, because they told us. Because we have something to point to. And it's unfortunate for some people that we have to present all this data, because we've got enough stories in our communities to know what's going on. I'll stop and let you ask me something.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Really want to lift up and appreciate, because our audience tends to be activists, and that's so powerful to call out that, yeah, if you realize you didn't do it all or there's something missing, fix it and keep getting to work. And I think that's such an important message. So just, I want to make sure that Miyonnee has time to fully present, but if you could tell me in about a minute, I'm really interested. I heard about how in January you organized the Real Women's Rally in Kansas City as a more inclusive alternative to the Women's March. In particular, media interviews, you said that you were motivated in part by the lack of inclusion of trans people and their voices in the Women's March. So if you could just tell me about how you organized this event to be inclusive.
Absolutely. So, that was a problem, and we've had deeper problems with Women's March in Kansas City. But I saw, we need to, we see this issue, we see what's happening. Why don't we speak up and say something and do something? And so that's what the Real Women's Rally was all about. It was calling my sisters in and saying, hey, I see the messiness going on, but I know we work. And we do good work. So let's call each other in and let's organize and let's get at the table together and figure out how we want to present this. This was a rally call for us, because quite frankly, we didn't need to go out there. We work all the time. But what we wanted to do was motivate and encourage each other and say, hey, I see you doing that work. I see that work that you're doing. And if you didn't know about this work, come on and get involved with what these people are doing over here. So that's what it was about, to start our year off, to be together, to rally together and say, let's support each other throughout the year. Don't let this be the last time we meet, right? Let's continue to do this work so that we can be more powerful. So when we meet again next January, we're not meeting each other. We know each other. And I just really felt good about that. My trans sisters got to talk, and they got to say what they wanted to say, and we got to listen, and that's a beautiful thing when you can be heard. So I'll tailor it down, because I want to hear what's next too.
Oh, thank you so much, Justice. And I want to say I don't have my camera on, but I was fist pumping while you were saying that. So thank you so much for your work, and folks, for our listeners. Yes, thank you. So please feel free to type in any questions you have for Justice in the chat box, and Pamela will get to as many questions as possible at the end. And I'll pass it back to Pamela.
Thank you so much. So it is my pleasure to get to introduce Miyonnee Hickman, whose pronouns are she, her, is a transgender intervention specialist with the Community Wellness Project. The mission of the Community Wellness Project is to promote community wellness through education, prevention, and resources, with particular regard for diverse cultural and racial minorities who are underserved and underrepresented in the U.S. and in its associated territories. They have offices located in the St. Louis and Illinois regions, and it works with low-income minority individuals, many of whom live below the poverty level and have limited skills or access to skills. Clients of the Community Wellness Project benefit from the group's culturally specific, culturally sensitive, and client-centered approach to service and delivery. And you can find out more at their website, which is on the slideshow, and it is cwpstl.org. Welcome, Miyonnee.
Thank you so much for having me, Pamela and Erin. Thank you guys so much. How are you?
Fantastic, and thrilled that you're here and able to join us.
That is amazing. It's my pleasure.
Great. So let's dive right in. So if you could tell us about the work you do at the Community Wellness Project and how you came to be doing that work.
Okay, well, I have been trying to do this work for a very long time. I noticed that in the St. Louis, well, first, I am an intervention/outreach specialist. We do HIV and STD outreach and prevention here at the Community Wellness Project. I've been working here since October, and I've been trying to get into this field for a very long time. But because I noticed that in the LGBTQ community, we don't have any, I guess you can say, advocates for trans, like nowhere that you can go for trans. So I'm trying to start a project. Well, we have a project coming up specifically geared for HIV positive transgender women, just for transgender women in general. Like I said, I just started, so I'm still going through a lot of trainings and things like that, but we're trying to make it to where we can have the transgender community can come here for, syringes or, hormone resources, any other resources, food, clothing, STD, HIV testing, everything is all free. And it's not just trans people, anybody, all are welcome. But, I'm specifically more, here for the transgender community, and we're just trying to make our voices be heard and just come together. I'm just trying to get us all to come together as a community.
Fantastic. And as organizers, we absolutely love to hear it, love to see it. And I also really admire the fact that you saw a need, you saw something that needed to happen, and you were like, I'm the leader I'm looking for to do that. So that's awesome. So I'm a firm believer in the power of personal stories, and so to the extent that you're comfortable, can you share some of your experiences in Missouri specifically, and any experiences that you've had, challenges, and I think at this time, as we deal with the movement in defense of Black lives, experiences with law enforcement, just so that people get a feel for what folks are dealing with on the ground.
Yes, I have. I absolutely have a story that when I was, when I read the question, I said, I know a story. I know the perfect story to tell. So when I was younger, my mother stayed in Jennings. Like, we stayed in Jennings, and there was always this one officer, I will never forget his name. It was Officer McFarland, and he would just bother me, like, for absolutely no reason at all. Like, one time in particular, me and a group of friends were walking down the street, and this was actually before I became trans. Like, before I was trans, I was extremely feminine. Like, I was still, looking like that guy, but I would wear like girl clothing and, just extremely feminine, but I was still facial hair, stuff like that. I just wanted to be who I wanted to be, how I wanted to be. And we were walking down the street one day, and he was like, just got out the car, pulled over, just told me to get against the car. And I'm like, it was like 20 people walking. And I said, out of all 20 of us, why am I the only person that you single out? And he's like, we got reports that you were involved in a carjacking. And I said, well, I'm walking down the street right now. So if I jacked the car, why would I be walking right now? So then he, basically what I had to say, it really didn't matter. So I actually ended up getting locked up. And when I went to jail, the other guy that was in there, booking me or whatever, he was like, he looked at me and he was like, oh, by the time you get out of here, you're going to have a full beard and mustache. And I said, actually, I won't. I'm like, but I won't even be here this long. I'm like, why am I even here? And he was like, oh, what's your name? And I told him my name, it's still my government name. And he was like, oh, I'm just going to call you he, she. And I said, and I won't answer to that. Like, you can just call me what I'm telling you to call me. And he's like, no, I'll just call you he, she. That's better for me. And I'm like, no, that's rude. And it's like, what can you say? Of course, in my mouth, I'm going to say what I want to say anyway. I don't care who I am, who I'm with, where I am, who you are. I'm going to speak my mind, especially if you offend me. So I told him, like, that is very wrong. I was just treated horribly there. It's like a lot of places, especially with cops, they feel like they can do you. When they find out that you're trans or you're gay, they feel like I can do you any kind of way or do you different because they get what they get from us is that we're weak, you know, and I'm absolutely not that at all. For me to walk around like I walk every day proudly, that shows you right there that I'm not weak, you know. So I had to stick my ground and stand my ground. Like, you will not call me that. I will not answer to that. You will call me this, and if you don't, then I won't answer. You know, just don't say nothing to me at all. You got to throw me in the cell, do what you have to do, but I'm not going to answer to that. You know, it's a lot of, like, I can go on and on about a lot of different stories, but it's just crazy like that. You can't be who you want to be. You can't dress how you want to dress. Like, it bothers people that much. You just living your life, you know, and I don't get it. It's really crazy.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
For sharing that story. And I'm reminded about a webinar we did a couple of months ago about, you know, sexual harassment, sexual assault in law enforcement. And the fact that as we deal with these discussions about policing in communities, as you said, you know, queer and trans, you know, communities are heavily policed. And, you know, Stonewall was a riot against police oppression. And that the number 2 most common complaint of police misconduct is sexual harassment or assault. So I'm horrified that you had to experience that. But I'm also mindful that, you know, this is why we all need to make sure that when we are doing work to defend Black lives, and when we talk about Black Lives Matter, all Black lives matter. And Black women, and particularly trans Black women, should be centered and should be heard and should have people marching and taking action in defense of our lives as well. So thank you for that. And
you're very welcome.
And I just had one follow-up question, which was that, you know, are you involved in any of the Black Lives Matter organizing going on? And have you felt that that's a welcoming space in St. Louis?
I am not involved in any Black Lives Matter anything right now because to me, this is my personal opinion. I feel like until trans and gay LGBT lives are included in that, then, you know, I don't want to say Black lives don't matter, but I'm just not going to support that because I feel like I'm not going to say arguing, but debating with someone earlier, and he was actually a gay person, and he said that we trans and gay people are taking it too far trying to be included. And I said, well, it was just a trans guy, you know, murdered by an officer not too long ago, and you didn't hear absolutely nothing about it. And then I'm like, so, you know, Black Lives Matter goes so hard for Black people, Black hetero people, but they don't go hard for us at all. And he mentioned that, you know, we had 2 disadvantages on our back being Black and gay. I said, so that means they should go twice as hard for us. But you never hear anything. Like, you never hear anything when it comes to LGBT or anything LGBT. You don't hear about it unless it's us, the community, sharing it. The news or Black Lives Matter, even though they say we're equal, they don't pick it up and, you know, make us equal. So yeah, until then, you know, I'm just not.
Okay.
Black trans lives matter, you know. But
yeah, and that thank you so much for sharing that, because your opinion matters, and also
thank you.
And also the fact is that means we have work to do, and both, you know, as we demand accountability and justice from the broader community, and we're demanding change within, you know, the broader community in Missouri and all over the country and the world, we need to be doing that inner work to address some of that, for lack of a better word, some of that BS that that is happening within movement spaces. So thank you for calling that out. I love it.
You're welcome. No problem.
All right. So we are going to go through some next steps, and then I'll get to the Q&A. And again, if you have questions, drop them in the tab. Miyonnee, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so I'm back, and I want to encourage you all to engage with Reproaction. Please do sign up for alerts on our website at www.reproaction.org. We do these monthly Act and Learn webinars every month. They're free, they're open to the public. They're just for this, so that we can connect and offer a space to share what's working, organizing strategies, educate y'all more deeply on topics, and learn from our wonderful panelists. We learn too. So if you sign up for alerts at www.reproaction.org, you will not miss a single invitation. We also ask you to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Reproaction. And then please do save the date for the webinar that we're going to host next month. It will be on July 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern, and the topic will be from COVID-19 shutdowns to inequities that have always been there. Access to childcare is a reproductive justice issue. And with that, I will pass it back to Pamela for Q&A.
Awesome. So I need everybody to unmute yourself, Justice and Jane Marie as well. And let's go through some questions. If you have questions, please drop them in the question tab. So the first question is from a Black trans woman who wanted to know, to follow up on what Miyonnee was saying about going hard for Black trans lives, and to see what exactly is that on the agenda with Black Lives Matter for y'all as activists in Missouri. And I'll give that question first to Jane Marie.
Word, no worries. Yes. Wait, so you said the question was from a Black trans woman or for a Black trans?
From a Black trans woman.
Let's see it. Being here, folks. And submitting questions. So yeah, there is absolutely a group of us turning up for Black trans lives this month. Pride is in fact canceled, you know what I'm saying? Until folks stop killing Black trans people, period. We don't celebrate ourselves and each other, but you know what I'm saying, when we see people who are not Black and trans celebrating, we have been quick to come and let them know what really is this moment is about. And so there are some places we can plug in. This is essentially an entire month of action. We had a rally the first week of the month with about 1,000 people, with the most trans looking flag sunset I've ever seen, honestly. And then it was like the sky was blessing us, so that was powerful. And then last week we had another rally followed by a ball that we paid participants. We raised over $600 that day to pay people in addition to what we were already planning on paying them. We had a couple, first prizes, second prizes, all that stuff, playing Black, trans, and queer people last week. So this week is a teach-in week. And because it's Juneteenth, it's really powerful because a lot of people don't know what Juneteenth is, right? And they don't know that Juneteenth should and hopefully very soon eclipse the July 4th celebrations, because this is the real thing we need to be celebrating. We haven't gotten it right. 1776, we didn't quite get it right away. So we have a lot more work to do. And I think celebrating when Black people are free is a perfect thing to focus on. So we do have a teach-in on Thursday this week. And let's see, we have, on Juneteenth, we are also connecting our demands to the 5-point plan for our future in St. Louis, which is a continuation of the effort that folks were, up about back in, I'd say the summer of 2019, when a lot of our Black children were being killed. They had this 5-point plan that they brought up then. And then we also are attaching our trans demands to that kind of dynamic, that plan. So there's a lot going on, and I would suggest folks plug in at either the teach-in if you don't feel comfortable with COVID, you want to keep your distance, jump on the call tomorrow to learn a little bit more about both Juneteenth and abolition, and also Black trans demands. And then on Friday you can also plug in at the march that Action St. Louis is hosting, and it's really a whole nationwide turn up. So DC and everywhere, 619 is the move. and that's going to be downtown. So as one really quick, the link to sign up to go to the teach-in is a bit.ly link, so bit.ly/teach-in, FFI, capital FFI. So definitely check that out.
That's fantastic, and I absolutely love teach-ins. I think it's a tactic that just isn't being used enough. So that's fantastic. But I get to see how y'all do it, and then I'm gonna copy all the good stuff for future work. Exactly, like a smart organizer. So the next question, I'm going to give it to Miyonnee first, and then Justice and J. Marie can weigh in. But it's about building community, and this is from somebody who is in a small rural town, not in Missouri, but it just doesn't even know how to start. But also, as you said, Miyonnee, knows that there's this need, and that, as J. Marie said, knows that there are people in need, that there are trans folks who need community and then also need to organize for justice. So, Miyonnee, what kind of advice do you give for somebody who's just trying to figure out, like, how do I start?
The first thing I would say is always be true to you.
Mm-hmm.
Do whatever makes you happy. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you only get one life, and you have to live it to the best of your ability. And it's your life to live, nobody else's. So live it how you want to live it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, just like I said, stay true to you. Live your life how you want to. Be confident and just own it. How you picture yourself. That's how you live your life, how you picture yourself. I live my life according to how I want to see myself in the future. And if I have visions of myself in the future, that's how I live my life, according to how I want to make it to what I'm seeing for myself in the future. Don't let anybody discourage you or tell you anything different or say anything to you to stop you or dim your light, because you're awesome. We all are.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just got chills. That's awesome. So Justice, so if you could give just some advice, some pointers of how somebody should, who might be in a small town and is thinking about organizing, to get started.
So I would say, try to find yourself somebody who would agree to mentor you. I have several mentees for various reasons, and so if you could try to find yourself a mentor, that would be helpful. There are a lot of things happening in the online virtual space that you can plug into that will open your world up. With people all across the country who you can connect with, who are advocating for the same things that you want to see and working for that. And they're building networks. So you may be holding that space down where you are, but you're connected to a larger group of people. That's actually something that I do with National Bailout. So, I'm holding it down there, but I connect to them. A group that might be helpful for you, if you is Blue. You might want to check them out. BLUU, Black Lives UU. And I just offer that. I think that they do a really good job of being trans affirming and really intentional about how they go about doing work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that recommendation. And then J. Marie, did you have something to add to that, getting started?
I mean, yeah, no, they really covered a lot of it. I would just say, similar to kind of combine both of them, like Miyonnee's piece about what you want to see for your life and how you want to be seen and loved on in your local community. You set the standard for that. You know what I'm saying? So obviously we don't always have the power to shape every single aspect of our conditions, but You know what I'm saying? If you want to have a group, or if you want community and you see yourself in the future with surrounded by other queer folks, other allies, you create the space, right? And maybe it is online at first, like Justice said. Maybe it is, follow a lot of these online folks, like there's Black trans folks and trans issues kind of being talked about online so much, because that's where a lot of us can be safe to do so. Of course, we have to watch out for surveillance and things like that. But the online kind of sphere is the promised land for a lot of folks, you know what I mean? And, I think just finding ways to take online and offline things to kind of put them together is really always the hope. But, if you want your community center to hold a space, you demand that you know what I'm saying? You get the flyer out, you tell a couple other people to come with you. So, I just follow the lead of Miyonnee, because when you know who you want to be and you recognize who you're trying to move with you and what kind of world and community you want, you get to decide who that is, inclusive of. And you know what I'm saying? There's nothing like when you get to that promised land for yourself that you imagine for yourself, and it's everything that you know that you deserve. Like, that's the point. So take it in your own hands, and maybe you got to meet in the house at first, but maybe you got to meet on the phone or online. But it's a really beautiful thing when you demand it and take up that space.
Love it. That's the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much. So I would also remind activists who are attendees or listening to this webinar that Reproaction has a tremendous amount of resources that are available for free on our website. As an organization that is advancing reproductive justice, we absolutely want people to ask questions and to tap into those resources, including Advocacy 101, which is a webinar, and then Direct Action Organizing, which is another webinar, and a toolkit that is specific to organizing around direct actions around anti-abortion fake clinics, but also gives a good example of something that could be changed to fit organizing and accountability action for other things as well in your community. And then, as always, these awesome organizers and the groups that they are working with do have an online presence. So if you live someplace where you're interested in working on trans leadership, I highly recommend that you visit the ACLU of Missouri's website and that follow along and see how they're doing that work. I was not really joking when I said that one of the smartest things organizers do is look at people doing brilliant work and say that was brilliant. How can I do that in the work that I'm doing? So in the interest of time, we love to stay on time because we appreciate the time everybody has given us. I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank J. Marie Hill, Justice Gatson, and Miyonnee Hickman for giving us your time and sharing your expertise and advice. And we sincerely hope that everybody has a wonderful Pride online, virtually, or in teach-in spaces. Learn something this June. And everybody have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you so much. You do the same.
Thank you.